Hello everybody, and this is Chaos with Chaos Esports Productions, bringing you another viewer cast submitted by Warhawk. Warhawk actually recently got promoted to Silver League, so congratulations Warhawk. Job well done. Today we're going to be looking at a PvZ. He's hoping to improve his PvZ so he can start doing some harassment to his buddy who's a Zerg player. So we're going to be taking a look, seeing what he can do. First off, right off the bat, I want to make a quick comment about this pylon placement. The pylon placement is actually a little bit too far forward. You'll notice when you click on this pylon when you're in-game, the sphere of power actually will be just outside of this ledge. What you want to do is you want to place it back just far enough to skim this edge, and that will allow you to build your forge kind of around here, and then your gateway, a pylon, and then a second gateway, so you can do a single zealot wall off. This way you aren't forced to stay on 2 base for too terribly long. A lot of times when people fully wall off, which I believe you do in this game, when you fully wall off, you kind of hinder yourself from expanding because you have to destroy your own wall and finally get out and expand. So just one minor detail right off the bat. So I am going to try and go through this fairly quickly since it's a 24-minute game and it kind of goes on for a little longer than I would appreciate. So you're going to get in here and we're going to look at your vision, and at this point you really haven't seen anything. Now, one thing that I highly recommend is just poke in, kind of down here in this area. You want to make sure you understand when your opponent is putting down a spawning pool, or if he's going for that hatch first. Scouting that information is very, very crucial to how quickly you need to get up this wall versus plant down your nexus. Obviously, if he goes for a hatch first, you're going to be able to delay getting your cannon, and you can actually go straight for the nexus as soon as possible. So, other than that, you're going to be doing a little patrolling. One thing you can do rather than doing this type of queue, or I don't even know what you call it, but you can actually hit P and right click, and that will actually patrol him between 2 points rather than having to go back and forth. Just small things. Other than that, going to continue on getting your probes up. Hopefully, you are trying to get your gateway down. Now, by going for the gateway before the nexus, you're delaying your nexus significantly, and at this point you really don't have any clue of when this spawning pool is going down. So definitely want to make sure you get that vision. Now that you finally have, you know that you're pretty darn safe, and actually are more than happy to go ahead and plant down your nexus. Now you do come down here, scout that his hatch is done, but one thing that you don't do is you don't go and take a look and see what he's doing up in his main. You can see that had you sent this probe back into his main, you would have gotten a really, really good vision of what his plan is. And by seeing Roach Hydra, that usually when I see that, I get tickled inside, because basically just means that my standard build going for Colossus is going to be my tech path of choice, because usually Roach is then followed up by a couple more gas and then Hydra Den once the layer is completed. So, but you do choose to wall in, which I would recommend in general, just because, like I said, it kind of gives you that feeling that you've got to stay in your own base and can't really go out and scout. Because I mean, for a good majority of the game, this is the only vision that you have, pretty much only in your base. And actually, I didn't notice this probe transfer earlier. You can do that. I wouldn't recommend transferring that many probes until you've got like oversaturation in your main. Reason being is you lose so much more mining time when you send all those probes down to here, and right now minerals are very, very crucial, because you really don't have any idea what your opponent's doing, and you really haven't teched up to anything. So keeping guys in your main is probably a better option. And then we don't see constant probe production, which is definitely something that you're going to need to work on. Probe production, especially in the early leagues, like I mentioned in the last video that I did for you, it's very, very key. Keeping your Nexus on hotkeys and constantly flipping back to check on that is very, very crucial. Now at this point you really haven't dedicated to a tech path, and I feel like at this point you're 8 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, and one, you don't have any sentries, which means you can't throw out a hallucinated Phoenix to figure out what your opponent's doing, and you really don't have any tech options. The Robo probably should have gotten planted down after the third gateway, because that at least gives you the option of, hey, I can wait a little bit longer, plant down my fourth gateway if I feel like he's going to be aggressive, or I can, tech up to Colossus a little bit faster. So, and usually about this time is when I start to throw guys into gas. Once you've gotten like partial saturation, like around 12, 13 probes, I like to throw the next few probes into gas. That way your gas income gets a little bit higher. And obviously you're still very, very undersaturated in your main, so you need to work on probe production. That is key. Getting your +1 upgrade. One little interesting timing that you have, if at around halfway completion of your +1 attack, you can throw down your Twilight Council, and your Twilight Council will actually finish around the same time your +1 finishes, so that way you can go straight into +2. Especially in upgrades, you want to make sure that you're constantly doing stuff with your forge, because there's no reason why you shouldn't continually pump out upgrades. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue speed on up here, because I'm pretty sure it's just kind of just not being consistent with that pro production. Gotta be consistent. You're still undersaturated in both your main and your natural. So yeah. So you send your observer out to get a good idea. We look at the vision. You actually see that he sent Lings out. And then you actually get a really good idea of what you're up against as far as Roach Hydra being his tech choice. So that's good. Obviously, need to work on getting Pylon blocked. Never a good thing. And then you choose to go double Colossus. Now, in your situation, since you are in Silver League, going double Colossus on 2 base is not the end of the world. A lot of times you're not going to have enough production, or you're not going to have enough income to support double Colossus and Gateway units, so you kind of are going to be forced to pick between the two. And if you had kept your probe production up, at this point you'd probably be fully saturated on both your main and your natural, and that would significantly increase your income. I mean, you can see you're still fairly low compared to your opponent. You are keeping toe-to-toe as far as Harvester goes, but your opponent is getting on third base, and you really don't know about it. So he's going to come in, poke up. Now, I'm going to slow this down, because this is actually, I was very impressed when I saw this. 1, 2, 3... 4. Okay, those force fields for a Silver League player, those are pretty decent. I give you credit. One thing, rather than doing this fourth one over here, I probably would have done closer to this area, because if we back up just a little bit, you'll notice that he kind of cuts in. So he backs up, tries to do a little bit of damage, kills a unit. That's a great time warp, by the way. So you got the 2, and you see that he's starting to move this way. So this sentry, since it's full, planting him down here and here, you'll actually grab all of these units with that force field, and with that you'll kill the majority of his army, as opposed to just a handful of units besides the ones that escape. So But still, pretty decent job on the force fields. Now this Ling counterattack, you don't see it coming, and he actually comes in here and does a fair amount of damage. Gets several stalkers surrounded, and actually kills your Colossus, which is never a good thing. Now, if we look at your production tab, we notice that you aren't building any more Colossus. The easiest way to make sure that you continue Colossus production is I usually have my Nexus on my number 4 hotkey, and then anything that is Robo or Stargate goes on 5. That way I can tab between the Stargate and the Robo and continue production from those buildings. Because I know a lot of times players won't put them on the hotkey, and then whenever they're just checking probes and whatnot, they'll be like, oh, double click and start building stuff. That's just very inefficient. It's way easier to just throw it on a hotkey and you know, get used to it that way. So gonna push out with the Colossus and do a fairly decent job. Sell it. Decided it wanted to go hang out for a little while. Now, at this point, you should probably be thinking about taking a third. You're a fair the way through the game. You've just held off a big push, and if we look at the main, you're kind of getting really close to these mineral patches being depleted. So now is about the time that you should start thinking about taking a third. I mean, you've got enough money. It's very viable. In your current spawn position, I would definitely take this third, and then wall off this area with a couple gateways and cannons. So, still haven't seen any other upgrades. Starting to get charged, which is good. And this is where I'm gonna go back and harp on you a little bit more for lack of probe production. You're fully saturated in your main, which is good, but your natural is still undersaturated by 6 probes, and that is kind of giving you this gas mineral imbalance. Now, you can just say, okay, well, I've got lots more gas. I need to figure out a way to get rid of that gas. This is actually about the time you should start thinking about throwing down a Twilight Council and start thinking about building Archons, because Archons, the likelihood of him staying on Roach Hydra for too terribly much longer is fairly small. I know he's got 18 Roaches in production and a whole bunch of Hydras, but you can see that he's starting to transition out by getting out Swarm Hosts. You haven't quite seen that yet, but definitely something. I remembered seeing this and being like, wow, that was just poor placement. So you're starting to push out, which in this case is kind of okay. It's not really the end of the world, but you push out, and actually you give him a fair whoops. You know, you give him free reign of pretty much doing whatever. You see him pushing up, and you push back. In his case, what he probably should have done is he should have come in here and taken out some of these pylons, deactivated some of these buildings before coming back to deal with the army. And actually, he loses a fair number of units just because he tries to focus down the Colossus so much, and actually loses the majority of his army. And you get some free swarm hosts, no big deal. So back home, he's got a whole bunch of swarm hosts. And, you know, you're still sitting on 2 bases. This is not a really good position to be in. I know I had a lot of trouble when I was in Silver and Gold League against Zerg, because, you know, a lot of times you just say, okay, I want to stay on 2 bases because I'm comfortable on it, and, you know, I don't really have to worry about counterattacks and things like that. But you're really going to need to develop a skill to know when it's appropriate to expand. It can be hard in the lower leagues just because you don't necessarily understand what's going on, but just in general, if you're not on a 3rd base by the 15-minute mark-ish, you should probably be thinking about taking a 3rd. It doesn't really matter where you're at, because if you stay on 2 base for much longer, you're just going to be, it's kind of a catch-22, or, you know, the concept of diminishing returns. The longer you stay on 2 base, the harder it is going to be to come back in the game. So now this push out is probably not ideal because you've got half your army sitting back here at home, including a Colossus. So finally pushing out now. So you're going to come in here with all these units kind of a little prematurely, and these units are just going to more or less die. A little bit unfortunate. So yeah, so he comes up with the swarm hosts. His roaches come in. He actually just barely doesn't take out the Colossus because you run away with it. And you know, back to the mineral versus gas stuff. You definitely need to be thinking about going High Templar and getting Archons, and heck, you can even go get Storm. Because Storm is pretty good against swarm hosts. It's a little harder than Colossus just because you have to know where they are and have a good idea of what to do. So looks like this guy is actually going to build Nexus over here. Now, in your league, this is kind of okay, but in general, obviously if he's got a link here, it's gonna do you more harm than good. But it's very hard if it does get scouted, like in this example, to hold it, because it's so far away from your main and your natural, and your mothership core is not generally with your army, so you can't recall back. So not recommended to take this further expansion. Sorry for the seriously long video, but it's kind of a long replay. So okay, so yeah, at this point I think the game is more or less in a very weird position. This army is very good, but without the Archons, this tech switch over to Mutas just annihilates it. You'll see that all of your anti-air goes away, all of your Colossus die, and you know that more or less puts you in such a position that you really can't come back from it. You send all your stuff over to hopefully do some damage, but they just get taken out by the random roaches, and that is GG. So yeah, I think the biggest thing was the lack of the Templar archives to get Archons out, and then the denied expansion or lack of expansion. Those were kind of the two big takeaways from this game. I think overall your playstyle and your mechanics is okay. Definitely need to watch your probe production and make sure that you're fully saturated before you stop building probes, because the quicker you can get saturated, the quicker you can dedicate all of your money to building units and upgrades. So those are kind of my recommendations. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments. If you got any other questions, feel free to also put those in the comments. If you enjoyed, feel free to hit the like button. And also, if you are new to the channel, welcome. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you would like me to cast one of your replays, feel free to send it to the email in the description. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next game.